Hello, welcome to BikeSocial. I'm Michael Mann, and you join me here at Donington Park with these two beauties. The Fireblade celebrates its 30th anniversary this year, 2022. So we have the latest edition, the 2022 model, in the 30th anniversary colours right here. And this model has been updated since the most recent iteration, which was brought out in 2020. Of course, that was a significant update on its previous generation, the 2017 bike as well. And then right next to me here, the 1992 model, the original Fireblade. It's great how they look so similar. And in this video, we're going to be talking to the large project leader, so the boss man of the latest Fireblade. His name is Fuykui Hosokawa. Mr. Hosokawa, welcome to BikeSocial. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for introducing me to your new baby. Yeah. So tell me, you have been involved with Honda for how long? And you've been involved with the Fireblade project previously, before this one, correct?
Joined Honda in the year 2000, and I'd always loved the Fireblade since before joining the company. So after I joined Honda, I bought a 2000 Fireblade and loved riding that. My first period in Honda was with different bikes, but from 2008 I got the chance to be the test project leader for the Blade. For the 2008, my first experience with the testing was actually being the test rider, and then from the 2012 model I was in overall charge of the whole testing team, and that's basically been my main focus ever since. And the test project leader in Honda, their role is, together with what we call the LPL, the large project leader, they fix the concept of the bike. And as you go through the development, as test project leader, you're always making sure that you're on the way to meeting the concept that you fixed. For the 2022 model, I was actually both the test project leader and the number one guy, so the large project leader, so two jobs.
LPL とテストリーダーと両方やりました。
You had a busy time. So your history with the Fireblade, you obviously know the model inside out, every single detail, and also what it means to the customers and what it means to the business. There's clearly a huge amount of evolution between 1992 2022. What is it? What is the part of the Fireblade sort of heritage and its heart that is shared between the two models?
So when the Blade was born, most big bikes had incredible amounts of power, but they're also quite heavy. So the starting point of the Fireblade was how to take the weight of the bike to the minimum limit possible, how to make the bike with the best power to weight ratio. The reason for that was to make the bike as controllable and as fun to ride as possible. That was the kind of starting point for the bike. That enjoyment of the bike comes from its controllability. So throughout the evolution, even though there's been a bit of a change in a focus that means the bike is more used as a race bike has to be controllable as well. So if you're not being able to handle the bike the way you want to, you won't be enjoying it and you won't be riding it fast. And that is something that has never changed about the Fireblade, that controllability being the reason that it's such a fun bike to ride.
ずっと引き継いで今まで最新のモデルまで続いています。
The agility and the handling ability of the new bike is paired with an incredible amount of power. I'm sure that you could have even increased more power, but who needs all of that power for the road, even the track nowadays with the electronics available? You've clearly been led, the company's been led by its racing heritage and its potential to be a race winner in World Superbikes, in World Endurance, in the Suzuka 8 Hours, and here at the Bennett's British Superbike Championship. How much of a focus for you was for the development of the most recent models, and of course the 2022 model, down to its racing ability?
レースに出るには
Obviously, developing a mass production bike and developing like a pure race bike, the regulations are different, so it's a slightly different thing. But Obviously, when you're in production-based racing, like World Superbikes, British Superbikes, the potential of the road bike, which has to pass all the road, emissions regulations, etc., that has to be very high. And so I think the change that came in 2020 was quite a big one, because there was a more significant focus on making that base potential of the road bike something that would help us win races. But it does go back a little bit to what I was saying before, that a powerful bike is no good if you can't control it, and that's the same whether you're on the road or on the racetrack. So we think the bike since 2020 has been more focused on the racetrack, but that doesn't mean that it's less fun to ride as a road bike, because generally what is useful and fun and fast to ride on the track is also useful and fun to ride on the road. So there's always been that element to it as well, but the focus has been since 2020 more on that race winning potential of the mass production bike, that is for sure.
And the power to weight ratio of the 1992 bike versus the 2022 bike has increased significantly. Obviously, the world of production motorcycles, the way in which they are produced, the way in which the customer requires their performance or agility or electronics has increased, of course, significantly too. But the way in which for the last 30 years or 3 decades worth of evolution has seen it almost double, I think, in the power to weight ratio. I mean, these kind of statistics are almost unbelievable. But in terms of the future of the Fireblades, how do you see that going? What are your goals? If you're working on the next iteration of this bike, or if you're involved somewhere, what are the stages of sort of development that you're focused on?
As you say, it's evolved enormously. In the future, it's hard to imagine like a giant leap forward as a big revolution, so we'll have to keep working, little by little on improving the power, improving the handling. But we'll always have in mind that the fun of the bike and the enjoyability of the bike is born from that controllability. In an extreme case, let's say if we changed from a combustion engine to a motor, even if we had made that kind of change, it would still always be about that controllability being what makes the Fireblade and what makes sports bikes fun to ride. But I think that will not change in the future.
I've been lucky enough or fortunate enough at this event to ride both of these models. So even with 30 years worth of difference, you still get a sensation with the original bike. And I assume that this is what Honda created it for, to give you that feeling of power, but controllability, but also the sort of the soul. So you really get the feeling of the feedback of the engine and the noise, not only from the exhaust but the intake as well. And yet I rode the latest model as well on the track, slightly higher pace, but even with the familiarity or the help, the assistance of the electronics, it still gave you that same feeling. But perhaps I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the details of the new bike. So how it has changed, so from the 2020 model into the 2022 model, and why? Why did you need to feel as though those changes needed to be made? Were these parts something that you already had on a list, or do you listen to sort of customer feedback?
So the real focus after 2020, when we felt that we'd got to a really good place with fantastic top-end power, the real focus for this bike was to also improve the low to mid-range, so the power delivery in the mid-range in particular. So as a development team, when we got together to think about the next step, that was the thing that we all agreed is what would make the bike even better. And the benefit of that is not only for race teams and racing, it's also equally good for the customers to have that extra mid-range. So that was the real focus from the start that the development team fixed for the 30th anniversary model.
Change to engine components and gearing, is that correct?
For getting that low to mid-range improvement and the improvement in the throttle response, the things we were looking at were the air cleaner, some slash cut intake funnels, changes to the inlet port as well. And that was all about not only the low to mid-range improvement, but also the improvement to the throttle response.
注力をしました。
And of course, for racing, the gearing, because you can obviously change the final drive in racing, that isn't such a relevant thing. But for people that ride the bike on the road, changing that final drive and changing the gearing was something that we felt would be really important for them as well.
メリットのある話ですけど、
In addition to that, the mid-range power delivery change, there's also that improvement, let's say, to the gearing. So they're the two main things that we focused on.
視点で、さらに追加で変更しました。
It'll be interesting to stand here again in another 30 years and see how Fireblade has evolved. Maybe we'll have an e-Fireblade by then. Maybe it'll be before 30 years.
そうかもしれないですね。そうかもしれないけど、まあ私は個人的にはエンジンが好きです。
Who knows in 30 years' time? Personally, Hosokawa-san says he likes a combustion engine, but the thing that must be maintained is the ability on two tyres to have a bike that has the best balance possible, that's the most enjoyable to ride.
モーターになるかもしれないし、そこは
If that in the future becomes an electric motor, so be it. The most important thing is to have the continuation of making the Fireblade the most fun possible it is to ride.
楽しいものにしなければならないと思うし、30年経つと
And he'll be retired in 30 years.
We'll all be on flying bikes by then, I think. Hosokawa-san, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed our brief history of the Fireblade. Of course, there have been plenty of iterations between 1992 and 2022, but thanks once again for joining us.